Something happened on October 13th, 2025, that has astronomers either frantically searching for answers or pretending they never saw it. An interstellar visitor, the mysterious object we've been tracking for months, allegedly transmitted light pulses in a sequence that shouldn't exist in nature. 5, 8, 13. The Fibonacci sequence. The mathematical signature woven into the fabric of reality itself. And here's what makes this absolutely mind-bending. This happened on the exact anniversary of one of the most witnessed unexplained phenomena in modern history. The miracle of Fatima, Portugal, exactly 108 years ago to the day. Tens of thousands of people watched the sun dance across the sky in 1917. Now, on that same date, an object from beyond our solar system pulses light in the golden ratio. The mathematical fingerprint some believe encodes the very structure of creation. While NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory conveniently went offline for maintenance. While the best imaging system we have at Mars has been down since October 1st, giving just enough time for any inconvenient data to vanish into bureaucratic shadows. The timing is so precise it feels orchestrated. Tonight, we're diving deep into what might be the most significant development in the 3I/Atlas story yet. Or perhaps it's the most elaborate information leak designed to prepare us for something we're not ready to face. Either way, what's unfolding right now, hidden behind the sun where we cannot observe it, demands your complete attention. Before we go further, I need to ask something. If you find value in this content, if you keep coming back to this channel because we dive into topics that mainstream media won't touch, please hit that like button right now. It tells the algorithm that this matters, that people want the truth. And make sure you're subscribed, because only about 30% of our regular viewers have actually clicked that button. Don't miss future updates. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing our global community come together around these mysteries. Let's start with the claim itself, because it's extraordinary enough that even discussing it requires careful framing. On October 13th, 2025, researcher David Serida published an analysis stating that 3I/Atlas, now positioned behind the sun from our perspective on Earth, was observed sending light pulses in the Fibonacci sequence. 5, 8, 13. Three numbers that appear throughout nature with eerie consistency. Think about it. The spiral of a nautilus shell, the branching patterns of trees, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, the proportions of the human body. These aren't random. They're the mathematical expression of phi, the golden ratio, approximately 1.618. This number seems to encode efficiency and beauty into the fundamental architecture of reality itself. Finding this signature in signals from an interstellar object isn't just unusual. It's paradigm-shifting. Serida, who's been tracking 3I/Atlas through what he calls his hyperdimensional solar system model, claims these pulses correspond to specific celestial domains in his framework. 5 equals Earth. 8 equals what he identifies as Planet 591, a theoretical body he proposes orbits between Mars and the asteroid belt. And 13 equals what he calls the virtues, which in his model aligns with something named after Methuselah, the biblical figure who lived 969 years. Hold that number. We're coming back to it, because the connections get deeper and stranger the further we dig. Now, before you dismiss this entirely, understand that Serida has made previous claims about 3I/Atlas that initially looked absurd but later gained unexpected support from other data sources. He's not a mainstream astronomer working within the established scientific institutions, but he's also not fabricating things from thin air. His analysis draws from Tesla's theories, from ancient sacred geometry, from Dante's Paradiso written in 1321, and from orbital mechanics that, whether you believe his conclusions or not, do show genuinely strange alignments. The timing alone is what makes even skeptics pause. October 13th, exactly 108 years after the Fatima event. In Serida's model, 108 is a harmonic frequency of 432 Hz, which various researchers, both fringe and mainstream, associate with natural resonance. 108 times 2 equals 216. Times 2 equals 432. These are the kinds of numbers that show up in ancient architecture, in the dimensions of the Great Pyramid, in musical scales that predate modern tuning systems. Whether that means anything cosmically significant, or whether humans simply gravitate towards certain ratios because of how our brains process pattern recognition, is the eternal question. But here's where it gets uncomfortable even for the hardcore skeptics. NASA shut down the Solar Dynamics Observatory's live feed on October 13th. They cited routine maintenance. The timing, though, is the kind of coincidence that makes even level-headed scientists squint with suspicion. The SDO is one of our primary tools for observing solar activity and anything passing near the Sun. If 3I/Atlas were going to do something unusual while positioned behind our star, the SDO would be the instrument most likely to catch it. And it went dark. Then there's HiRISE, the high-resolution imaging science experiment camera aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. It's been offline since October 1st. HiRISE is capable of resolving objects down to 30 centimeters per pixel at certain distances. At 3I/Atlas's distance during the Mars flyby, it could potentially resolve features down to 30 kilometers per pixel. That level of detail could reveal structural features, surface composition anomalies, anything that might suggest this object isn't just a dirty snowball from another star system. The official explanation is that one of the camera's electronics units has been failing since August 2023. Plausible. But the timing of the complete shutdown, right before the most critical observation window we'll have for months, feels almost scripted. Like someone wrote this into a movie screenplay. Add to this the broader context. On October 1st, the United States government entered a partial shutdown. Over 15,000 NASA employees were furloughed. 2 days later, 3I/Atlas made its closest approach to Mars, 29 million kilometers, the best opportunity for detailed imaging and spectroscopy. Yet as of now, mid-October, no official HiRISE images have been released. No process data from the Mars orbiters. No updates from NASA beyond preliminary statements that essentially say it's probably just a comet. The European Space Agency released a few images from their Mars Express and ExoMars Trace Gas orbiter showing a faint white dot against the Martian sky. That's it. Nothing with the resolution we were promised. Nothing that tells us anything we didn't already know. So when David Sereda publishes an analysis claiming 3I/Atlas sent Fibonacci pulses on the Fatima anniversary, the immediate response isn't just, is this true? It's, is this a leak? Sereda himself frames it that way. He openly questions whether what he's presenting is a hoax or whether it's information being released through unconventional channels to avoid direct attribution. He notes that 2 previous leaks about 3I/Atlas that initially appeared fake later turned out to contain accurate information that was only confirmed by official sources weeks afterward. This is the pattern we've seen in other high strangeness cases. Information appears in fringe communities or through unverified sources. It's dismissed as conspiracy theory. Then, quietly, elements of it are confirmed through official channels, but never with direct acknowledgement. The phenomenon gets plausible deniability. The insiders who leaked it avoid consequences. And the public is left trying to assemble a puzzle where half the pieces are labeled fiction and the other half are labeled classified. If you're still with me, if this is resonating with something deep in your gut that says there's more to this story than we're being told, make sure you leave a like on this video. It genuinely helps more people discover this content. And keep watching, because what I'm about to tell you gets even stranger. Let's dig into what Sereda actually claims the Fibonacci numbers mean. In his hyperdimensional solar system model, which he developed with his late partner Crystal Manica Sereda, there are 9 hidden planets or orbital resonances that correspond to ancient cosmological models. Dante's Paradiso describes 9 celestial spheres, each associated with different angelic orders. The Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the fixed stars, and the prima mobile. Sereda maps these onto orbital periods calculated by dividing 591, his proposed central orbital period in Earth days, by the golden ratio over and over. When you do that math, you get numbers that eerily match the orbital periods of known planets. Earth's exact sidereal year of 365.256 days appears when you divide 591 by certain factors involving the golden ratio. The orbits of Mars, Venus, Mercury, even the outer planets, all seem to cluster around these ratios with accuracy that's hard to dismiss as pure coincidence. Sarita points out that 3I/Atlas's rotation period was measured at 16.16 hours, which converts to 969.6 minutes. The age of Methuselah in the Bible. The oldest person in Scripture. The grandfather of Noah. Now you can argue that with enough mathematical gymnastics, you can make any number fit any pattern, and that's absolutely fair. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We see faces in clouds. We find meaning in randomness. It's how we're wired. But the specific claim here is that 3I/Atlas, on October 13th, transmitted 5, 8, 13. In Sarita's model, 5 is Earth's position in the harmonic sequence. 8 is the domain of what he calls the dominions, the theoretical planet 591. 13 is the virtues, tied to the outermost edge of this inner system. If an intelligence were using this object to communicate, and if that intelligence understood how humans have encoded cosmic order into myth and sacred geometry, then sending these 3 numbers would be a way of saying, we know your models. We know your history, and we're speaking your language. The alternative explanation is that someone on Earth fabricated this data, timed it to the Fatima anniversary for maximum psychological impact, and released it through Sarita to gauge public reaction. That's also entirely possible. In fact, it might even be more likely. But then you have to ask why. What's the benefit of creating a false narrative about an interstellar object that's already anomalous enough without embellishment? If this is disinformation, who benefits? Intelligence agencies testing public response to potential disclosure? Private organizations with access to classified data trying to force the government's hand? Researchers hoping to gain attention and funding? And what's the endgame? That's what keeps me up at night. There's a third option that doesn't get discussed enough. What if the data is real, but it's not coming from 3I/Atlas? What if there's a terrestrial or near-Earth source generating signals that appear to originate from the comet's position? That could be a test of detection capabilities, a way to measure how the public and the scientific community respond to potential non-human communication. It could be part of a broader disclosure strategy, incrementally introducing concepts that would have been unthinkable a decade ago, softening the public consciousness, preparing us for something bigger. Avi Loeb, the Harvard astrophysicist who's been one of the few mainstream scientists willing to publicly entertain the extraterrestrial hypothesis, hasn't commented directly on the Fibonacci pulse claim. But he has repeatedly emphasized that 3I/Atlas displays anomalies inconsistent with natural comets. The nickel-rich, iron-free emissions. The antisolar tail pointing toward the sun instead of away from it. The mass calculations suggesting an object over 33 billion tons, far larger than its brightness alone would indicate. Loeb ranks 3I/Atlas at a 6 on his proposed scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is definitely natural and 10 is definitely technological. A 6 means we should be taking this seriously, not dismissing it out of hand, because it challenges our comfortable assumptions about our place in the universe. The Fatima connection adds a layer that makes scientists deeply uncomfortable because it ventures into the realm of the mystical. On October 13th, 1917, between 60,000 and 100,000 people gathered in the Cova de Iria near Fatima, Portugal. They had been told by 3 shepherd children that the Virgin Mary would perform a miracle on that day. What happened next was witnessed by believers and skeptics alike. The sun appeared to change colors, rotating and spinning. It seemed to plunge toward the earth before returning to its normal position. Clothing that had been soaked by rain suddenly dried. Some reported seeing visions, others just the solar phenomenon. Newspaper reporters who came to debunk the event found themselves unable to explain what they'd witnessed. Skeptics have proposed various explanations. Mass hallucination induced by staring at the sun. Atmospheric optical effects caused by dust or moisture from the Sahara. Psychological suggestion amplified by religious fervor. But none of these fully account for the physical effects. The dried clothing. The fact that people in different locations, miles apart, reported the same sequence of events. And the specificity of the prediction made months in advance. If you're looking for a pattern, it's undeniably there. A predicted celestial event witnessed by a massive crowd on October 13th. Then 108 years later, to the day, an object from interstellar space positioned behind the sun at the moment of its closest approach to our star allegedly emits pulses that encode mathematical truths humans have spent millennia trying to understand. And the tools we'd normally use to verify or debunk this are conveniently offline. Richard C. Hoagland, another researcher who operates on the fringe of mainstream acceptance, but who has a legitimate background in NASA communications, calculated the harmonic significance of that 108-year gap. 108 is not arbitrary. It appears in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology as the number of sacred recitations. There are 108 beads on a mala, the prayer beads used in meditation. In numerology, 108 is considered a number of wholeness. 1 represents unity or the divine. 0 represents emptiness or completeness. 8 represents infinity. 108 degrees Fahrenheit is the internal temperature where human cells begin to die. The distance from Earth to the Sun is approximately 108 times the Sun's diameter. The diameter of the Sun is approximately 108 times Earth's diameter. These aren't random coincidences. These are mathematical relationships embedded in the physical structure of our solar system. Hoagland suggests that whoever or whatever is behind 3i/Atlas understands not just physics, but human symbology. They're speaking to us in a language that transcends mere radio signals. They're using synchronicity, the meaningful coincidence that Carl Jung wrote about, as a communication method. That brings us back to Dante. Dante Alighieri completed the Paradiso, the final section of the Divine Comedy, around 1321. He described the cosmos as a series of nested spheres, each governed by angelic intelligences and aligned with specific virtues. The dominions, the virtues, the powers. These weren't just poetic inventions. They were Dante's attempt to reconcile astronomy with Christian theology to create a map of heaven that aligned with the observable movements of celestial bodies. Sarita points out that Dante's model, 704 years old, maps almost perfectly onto his hyperdimensional solar system when you apply the golden ratio as the organizing principle. Now, 7 centuries after Dante wrote those words, an interstellar object appears. It crosses through our solar system on a retrograde orbit that passes within 5 degrees of the ecliptic plane. And if Sarita's claim holds, it transmits numbers that directly reference that same cosmological framework. Either Dante somehow intuited a structure that extraterrestrial intelligences also recognize, or someone with deep knowledge of both human history and celestial mechanics is orchestrating an incredibly elaborate message. The third possibility is that we're seeing patterns where none exist, that this is all confirmation bias and wishful thinking. But the challenge with evaluating this is that we're operating in a near-total information blackout. 3i/Atlas reached perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun, on October 29th. It's now on the far side of our star, invisible to Earth-based telescopes, and will remain so until early December. Whatever it's doing right now, we cannot see. We're blind. And that's exactly when you'd want to make your move if you were trying to avoid detection. The JUICE spacecraft, the European Space Agency's Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, is scheduled to observe 3i/Atlas in November using multiple instruments. But that data won't be transmitted back to Earth until February 2026 because JUICE is currently using its high-gain antenna as a heat shield and is too far from Earth to send high-bandwidth data. So we wait, for months in the dark. And while we wait, the speculation intensifies. Forums on Reddit dedicated to 3i/Atlas have exploded with activity. The 3i/Atlas subreddit, which barely existed 2 months ago, now has thousands of active members posting observations, theories, and alleged leaks. Some of it is noise. A lot of it is wishful thinking. But buried in there are people with legitimate astronomical backgrounds noticing things that don't add up. One user compiled a timeline of every official statement NASA's made about 3I/Atlas and compared it to the actual data releases. The pattern is clear. Every time anomalous findings are reported by independent observatories, NASA issues a bland reassurance that it's consistent with cometary behavior. But the detailed data that would support those reassurances never appears. The high-rise images that should have been released by now? Nothing. The spectroscopic analysis from the Mars flyby? Nothing. Even basic astrometry, the precise position measurements needed to refine the object's trajectory, have been slower to update than they were for previous interstellar objects like Oumuamua and Borisov. This could be bureaucracy. It could be the government shutdown, disrupting normal workflows. Or it could be something else. Something deliberate. When you combine the observation blackout with the timing of the alleged Fibonacci pulses, with the Fatima anniversary, with the fact that 3I/Atlas is now in the perfect position to perform a maneuver we couldn't detect from Earth, the shape of a narrative starts to form. And it's not a comfortable one. If you've made it this far, you're clearly invested in understanding what's really happening. That means something. It means you're not content with surface-level explanations. You want the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. So here's what I need you to do. Comment below with the word Fibonacci if you're still watching. Let me know you're out there. Let me know this matters to you. And if you haven't already, hit that like button. We're about to go even deeper. David Sarita's warning is blunt. If these pulses are real, if 3I/Atlas is indeed using sacred geometry and historical synchronicities to communicate, then we are not dealing with a random chunk of ice that wandered into our neighborhood. We're dealing with something that knows us, something that has studied our species, our myths, our mathematics. And it's choosing this moment to make contact in a language designed to bypass scientific gatekeepers and speak directly to the part of human consciousness that recognizes pattern and meaning. The implications of that are staggering. It would mean the Fatima event, whatever it actually was, is part of a longer timeline of contact. It would mean our religious traditions, our sacred numbers, our architectural alignments to celestial bodies. All of it might be responses to interventions we've misinterpreted as divine or mystical for thousands of years. It would rewrite history, but it would also require accepting a level of intelligence and intentionality that most scientists are not prepared to entertain. It's easier to file this under elaborate hoax or fringe speculation than to seriously consider that an interstellar object might be encoding messages in the mathematics of creation on the anniversary of one of the 20th century's most documented unexplained events. Yet here we are, and the object is still out there, hidden behind the sun, doing whatever it's doing while we sit in the dark waiting for December, waiting for the juice data, waiting for someone to finally release images that should have been public weeks ago. Think about that for a moment. The most significant potential evidence for non-human intelligence, or at least for something profoundly anomalous, is occurring right now, and we're locked out of observing it by a combination of orbital mechanics, equipment failures, and government shutdowns. The timing is impeccable, too impeccable, so we move forward with questions we can't yet answer. Did 3I/Atlas really send Fibonacci pulses on October 13th? If so, how was that data obtained, and by whom? Why hasn't it been verified or debunked by official sources? And if it's a fabrication, what purpose does it serve to release this specific narrative at this specific time? The answers, if they come at all, won't arrive until the object emerges from behind the sun. Until then, all we have is the mathematics, the synchronicities, and the unsettling feeling that something is being communicated in a language we've forgotten how to speak. But as we're about to see, the Fibonacci pulses are just the beginning of the strangeness. Because the position 3I/Atlas occupies right now, the timing of its perihelion, and what it could potentially do while hidden from our view might be the most critical part of this entire story. There's a window of opportunity that opens exactly once during 3I/Atlas's passage through our solar system. A window where, if you wanted to do something without being observed, the geometry of orbital mechanics hands you perfect cover. That window opened on October 29, 2025, when the object reached perihelion, and it won't close until early December. For roughly 6 weeks, 3I/Atlas is positioned behind the Sun from Earth's perspective, invisible to our telescopes, hidden in the glare of the star that gives us life. And if Avi Loeb's calculations are correct, this is precisely where and when an intelligent object would execute what's called a reverse solar Oberth maneuver. Let's break down what that means, because the implications are genuinely unsettling. The Oberth effect is a principle of orbital mechanics where a spacecraft gets maximum benefit from a propulsion burn when it's moving fastest, typically at the closest point to a massive body like the Sun. For an object entering the solar system at high speed, the best place to decelerate and capture into a bound orbit is right at perihelion. You fire your engines when the Sun's gravity is pulling you fastest. And the combination of your thrust and the gravitational assist allows you to shed velocity much more efficiently than if you burned fuel out in deep space. It's physics 101 for interplanetary travel. Every space agency knows this. Now imagine you're an interstellar probe arriving in a system you want to study. You don't want to announce your intentions. You time your approach so that perihelion occurs when you're on the opposite side of the Sun from the civilization you're observing. They can't see you. Their solar monitoring instruments are either offline or looking at the wrong wavelength. You execute your burn. You drop into a solar orbit. And by the time you emerge on the other side, you're no longer an interstellar interloper heading back out into the void. You're a resident, and they won't know until you decide to reveal yourself. 3I/Atlas reached perihelion at 1.44 astronomical units from the Sun, roughly 203 million kilometers. That places it just inside the orbit of Mars, but still well within what would be considered the inner solar system. The exact date, October 29th to 30th, falls within a range that David Serida has connected to other significant events, including the traditional calculation of Prophet Muhammad's birth date. Whether that's meaningful or coincidental, the fact remains that this object is now in the optimal position to change its trajectory without us knowing. Loeb has been explicit about this risk. In multiple blog posts and interviews throughout October, he stated that if 3I/Atlas executes a velocity change of 30 to 40 kilometers per second during the perihelion passage, it could reach Earth as early as late November or December. That's not speculation. That's orbital mechanics. Mathematics doesn't lie. An object with sufficient propulsion, using the Sun's gravity well as a slingshot, could arrive in Earth's vicinity within weeks of perihelion. We wouldn't see it coming until it emerged from the solar glare, already on an intercept course. The natural response is, but it's just a comet. Comets don't have engines. And that's correct. Natural comets don't. But 3I/Atlas has displayed enough anomalies that the question of whether it's entirely natural is no longer absurd. It's a legitimate scientific question. The nickel emissions without corresponding iron. The antisolar tail. The rotation period encoded in biblical numerology. The trajectory that passes within 0.0005% probability of 3 major planets. At some point, the stack of coincidences gets tall enough that refusing to consider alternatives becomes its own form of bias. What makes the current blackout particularly frustrating is that we do have assets in position to observe. ESA's JUICE spacecraft, currently en route to Jupiter, has a relatively clear line of sight to 3I/Atlas during November. The spacecraft is equipped with cameras, spectrometers, and particle sensors capable of detecting activity that Earth-based instruments can't see from behind the Sun. Observations are scheduled between November 2nd and 25th. But here's the catch. JUICE is so far from Earth right now, and traveling in such a position relative to the Sun, that it's using its high-gain antenna as a heat shield. It can only transmit data through its medium-gain antenna, and at a much reduced rate. The full dataset from JUICE's observations of 3I/Atlas won't be downlinked and processed until February 2026. That's 4 months from now. For months during which, if the object did something unusual, if it deployed smaller probes, if it altered course, if it showed any sign of artificial structure or propulsion, we won't know. The data exists. It's sitting in JUICE's memory banks, traveling through the outer solar system. But it's functionally inaccessible. We're driving blind. Then there's the question of what happens on December 25th. Multiple researchers, including Sarita and Michael Benjamin, have calculated that 3I/Atlas will be at what's called Great Pyramid angle to Earth on Christmas Day. The Great Pyramid of Giza has a slope angle of 51 degrees, 51 minutes. This angle appears throughout ancient architecture and is often associated with alignments to celestial bodies. On December 25, 2025, 3I/Atlas will be positioned at this precise angle relative to Earth's position. Now, you can dismiss this as numerology. The universe is full of angles, and if you calculate enough of them, you'll eventually find matches to human structures. But the timing is what stands out. Christmas Day, the symbolic birth of a figure who, in Western tradition, represents a divine messenger bridging heaven and earth. If you were designing a disclosure event, a moment where an interstellar object reveals itself to a global audience primed by religious and cultural symbolism, Christmas Day at Great Pyramid angle would be hard to beat. Sarita goes further. He notes that from October 19th, 2024 to December 25th, 2025 is exactly 432 days. That number again. The harmonic frequency, 432 Hz, is advocated by some researchers as the natural tuning standard, as opposed to the modern 440 Hz concert pitch. Whether there's any physical significance to this, or whether it's pattern matching, is debatable. But the fact that someone calculated it, that the number appears, adds another layer to the synchronicity stack. The intermediate date of importance is December 19th, when 3I/Atlas makes its closest approach to Earth at 1.8 astronomical units, about 269 million kilometers. That's still far. Over 700 times the distance to the Moon. There's no collision risk, but it's close enough for serious observation once the object emerges from behind the Sun in early December. Telescopes worldwide will be trained on it. If there are any visual anomalies, any structural features inconsistent with a natural comet, that's when we'll see them. Assuming, of course, that those images are released to the public. The pattern established during the Mars flyby doesn't inspire confidence. ESA did release photos from the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter showing 3I/Atlas as a small white dot against the Martian sky. The images are real. They confirm the object was where orbital calculations predicted, but they show almost nothing of scientific value. No resolution of the nucleus. No detailed spectroscopy. Nothing that would help determine composition or structure beyond what ground-based telescopes already revealed. NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, equipped with the high-rise camera capable of much higher resolution, has released nothing. Amateur astronomers have processed publicly available raw image data from the Perseverance rover and claim to have spotted a faint smudge in the expected position of 3I/Atlas on October 1st. Astrophotographer Simeon Schmaus stacked 20 images from the rover's Mastcam instrument and identified what he believes is the comet in the constellation Corona Borealis. If accurate, that's our earliest look at 3I/Atlas as seen from Mars. But it's not official. It's not confirmed. And it doesn't provide the clarity we need. What happened to the high-rise images? The official NASA line is that the camera has been experiencing issues since August 2023, and data processing is delayed due to the government shutdown. Both statements are verifiable. But the combination of equipment problems, government disruption, and the object's disappearance behind the Sun creates a perfect storm of plausible deniability. If you wanted to suppress data, you couldn't ask for better cover. If it's just bad luck and bureaucratic slowness, the optics are terrible. Loeb addressed this directly in interviews during the first week of October. He pointed out that the high-rise camera would provide images with pixel resolution of about 30 kilometers, about 3 times better than what Hubble achieved in July. At that resolution, if 3I/Atlas has any surface features, any geometric structures, anything inconsistent with a fractured iceball, HiRISE would see it. The fact that we're now weeks past the flyby with no official release raises questions that go beyond normal scientific caution. Then there's the political dimension. On October 3rd, during a Newsmax interview, Loeb discussed the 7 primary anomalies of 3I/Atlas. Immediately following that segment, Stephen Miller, then serving as Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy at the White House, was asked whether the president had been briefed on 3I/Atlas. The question itself is significant. It means the object has risen to a level of attention where political figures are being asked about it on national television. Miller's response, or lack thereof, didn't clarify anything. But the fact that the question was posed indicates 3I/Atlas is no longer just an astronomical curiosity. It's entered the realm of policy consideration. What would a presidential briefing on 3I/Atlas include? Presumably the classified data we're not seeing. High-resolution imagery from military surveillance assets that are never publicly acknowledged. Spectroscopic analysis beyond what civilian instruments can provide. Trajectory models that account for potential maneuvers. Risk assessments. If there's even a 5% chance this object is artificial and potentially directed, that becomes a national security matter. Not because of immediate threat, but because of the implications for humanity's place in the cosmos and the potential for societal disruption if mishandled. The phrase that keeps appearing in discussions of 3I/Atlas among those taking the extraterrestrial hypothesis seriously is the dark forest. It comes from Liu Cixin's science fiction novel of the same name, but the concept is older. The idea is that the universe is like a dark forest filled with hunters. Every civilization is a potential threat. The safest strategy is to stay silent and hidden, because announcing your presence invites annihilation. If you do encounter another civilization, you strike first, because waiting allows them to potentially become an existential threat. It's game theory applied to cosmic scale. Loeb's paper with Adam Hibbard and Adam Krauss, titled, "Is the Interstellar Object 3I/Atlas Alien Technology?" frames the dark forest scenario as one possible explanation for why we haven't detected obvious signs of extraterrestrial intelligence. If most civilizations operate under dark forest logic, then any probe sent into another system would be designed to observe covertly. It would mimic natural objects. It wouldn't broadcast signals, and it would only reveal itself when strategically advantageous. In that framework, 3I/Atlas arriving on a trajectory that allows close observation of multiple planets, executing perihelion behind the sun where it can't be watched, and potentially timing its emergence with culturally significant dates is exactly what you'd expect. The probe studies the system. It determines the level of technological development. It waits for a moment of maximum psychological impact. Then it reveals itself, not through radio signals that scientists can control and gatekeep, but through visual presence that anyone with a telescope can verify. The counterargument is straightforward. Comets do weird things. Outgassing creates non-gravitational accelerations. Composition varies depending on formation conditions in the original star system. The lack of iron in the spectrum could be explained by depletion during the object's journey through interstellar space. The trajectory, while statistically unusual, is not impossible. And invoking alien intelligence as an explanation is a massive leap that requires extraordinary evidence. That's all valid. But the extraordinary evidence bar is a moving target. At what point does the accumulation of anomalies cross the threshold? If 3I/Atlas were to emerge from behind the sun in December and show clear signs of geometric structure, would that be enough? If it altered trajectory in a way that can't be explained by outgassing, would that do it? Or would there always be another natural explanation to grasp at? Another reason to delay the conclusion that we're not alone? The historical parallel that comes up repeatedly is the Galileo affair. When Galileo observed moons orbiting Jupiter, it contradicted the geocentric model that Earth was the center of creation. The data was clear, but accepting it meant overturning centuries of religious and philosophical certainty. So the data was resisted. Galileo was silenced, and it took generations for the obvious truth to be fully integrated into human understanding. We like to think we're past that. We like to believe we're rational, evidence-based, open to paradigm shifts. But the resistance to even considering that 3I/Atlas might be artificial suggests we're not as intellectually flexible as we pretend. What's happening right now, in the 6-week window of the perihelion blackout, could be the most important astronomical event in human history. Or it could be nothing. A chunk of ancient ice passing through, behaving exactly as comets behave, and we're projecting our hopes and fears onto random fluctuations in brightness and chemistry. The problem is, we can't know which until the object emerges. And by then, if it has changed course, if it has deployed subsystems, if it has done anything other than follow a ballistic trajectory, it will be too late to prepare for whatever comes next. Loeb has suggested that if 3I/Atlas shows continued anomalies after perihelion, proposals should be made to intercept it with a probe of our own. Not to destroy it, but to study it up close. To image it from meters away. To sample its composition and look for anything that doesn't fit natural formation models. That kind of mission would take years to plan and execute. But if we wait for absolute certainty before acting, the object will be gone, accelerating back into interstellar space. And we'll have missed the only chance in our lifetimes to definitively answer the question. December is going to be fascinating. Amateur astronomers are already coordinating observation campaigns. The moment 3I/Atlas emerges from the sun's glare, hundreds of telescopes will be pointed at it. Any visible changes, any new features, any deviation from predicted trajectory will be documented within hours. The scientific community won't be able to gatekeep this one. If something is there to see, the world will see it. Citizen science is a powerful force. But until then, we're in the dark. Literally and figuratively. An object from another star system is doing something, or doing nothing, in the one place in the solar system where we can't watch. And the tools and systems that should be giving us answers are offline, delayed, or locked behind classification barriers we can't penetrate. The synchronicities are piling up. The timing is impeccable, and the silence from official sources is deafening. Whatever 3I/Atlas is, whatever it's doing, we're about to find out if the universe is as empty as we've been told, or if we've been under observation all along, waiting for the right moment to be introduced to our cosmic neighbors, or cosmic predators, depending on which version of the dark forest theory turns out to be true. If you're still here, watching this deep into the video, you're part of a community that values truth over comfort. That's rare. That's valuable. Leave a comment below saying, "I'm ready," if you want more content like this. And make sure you hit that like button if you haven't already. We're going to keep digging. Now let's talk about the anomalies themselves, because when astronomers describe something as anomalous, they usually mean it falls slightly outside expected parameters. A comet that's a bit brighter than predicted. An asteroid with an unusual rotation period. Small deviations that require footnotes in papers, but don't challenge fundamental understanding. 3I/Atlas isn't that kind of anomalous. It's a cascade of violations. Each one individually explainable with creative reasoning, but collectively forming a pattern that doesn't fit any natural object we've encountered. Images from the Keck Observatory taken on August 24, 2025 show something different. There's a faint tail extending in the direction of the sun, not away, toward it. The researchers at the University of Hawaii who analyzed the Keck data confirmed it. This antisolar tail, as they're calling it, extends for hundreds of kilometers sunward from the nucleus. The proposed explanation is that larger, heavier dust particles are being ejected from the sun-facing side of the nucleus with enough velocity that they briefly travel toward the sun before solar radiation and gravity curve them back. It's possible. The physics works, barely, but it requires assuming an ejection mechanism more powerful than what we see in normal cometary outgassing. Then there's the issue of what's actually being ejected. Spectroscopic analysis from the Keck Cosmic Web Imager revealed prominent nickel emission lines. Strong, clear, unmistakable. Nickel is not rare in comets. What's rare is nickel without iron. The two elements form together in stellar nucleosynthesis and generally exist in predictable ratios. When you see nickel in a comet spectrum, you expect to see iron as well. 3I/Atlas shows nickel. No iron. None detected. Avi Loeb was quick to point out the significance. The only known process that produces pure nickel emissions without iron is the carbonyl pathway used in industrial nickel refinement on Earth. Nickel tetracarbonyl, a toxic compound used in electroplating and metallurgy. It forms when nickel reacts with carbon monoxide under specific conditions. The process was discovered by Ludwig Mond in the 1880s and revolutionized metal purification. Finding that signature in a comet from another star system is, to put it mildly, unexpected. The research team that published the Keck findings suggested that a natural carbonyl reaction could be occurring near the nucleus of 3I/Atlas. Carbon monoxide is present. We know that from James Webb Space Telescope observations. If conditions are right, perhaps nickel in the nucleus is reacting with that carbon monoxide to form nickel carbonyl compounds that then dissociate in sunlight, releasing pure nickel gas into the coma. It's chemically plausible, but the specificity of conditions required makes it a very narrow explanation for a very strange observation. The spatial distribution adds another wrinkle. The nickel emission extends to about 600 kilometers from the nucleus. Cyanide extends to 840 kilometers. Both form distinct plumes with clear boundaries, not the diffuse, gradual fade you'd expect from random outgassing. The fact that these two chemicals have different scale lengths suggests they're being produced or released through different mechanisms or from different locations on the nucleus. That kind of structure implies heterogeneity in the object's composition or activity, different parts of the surface behaving differently. Now let's talk about the water problem. NASA's Neil Gehrels Swift Observatory observed 3I/Atlas in July and August, measuring water production rates. They found the comet is losing water at roughly 40 kilograms per second. For comparison, imagine a fire hose running at full blast continuously for months. That's the analogy scientists are using. 40 kilograms per second is a lot of water for an object that's still relatively far from the sun. Most comets don't start heavy water loss until they're much closer, inside 1 astronomical unit. But here's the paradox. When NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite observed 3I/Atlas back in May and June, before the official discovery, researchers stacked over 9,000 images to look for signs of a coma. They found almost nothing. The radial brightness profile was nearly identical to inactive asteroids. No extended envelope of gas and dust. Yet by July, barely a month later, the object is blasting water into space at industrial rates. Either the activity ramped up incredibly fast, or the early observations missed something fundamental. The explanation offered is that gas and dust ejected in May wouldn't have had time to form a visible extended coma in the TESS images due to the time delay between emission and detection. Possible, but it creates a picture of an object that was essentially dormant when it was 6.4 astronomical units from the sun, then suddenly became hyperactive. That's not typical comet behavior. Most comets show gradual increases in activity as they approach the sun. 3I/Atlas seems to have flipped a switch. Then there's the color change. Early observations in July and August showed the comet with a reddish hue, consistent with organic compounds and dust. But more recent observations in September and October show it's turned green. Electric green, according to some observers. Green color in comets typically comes from diatomic carbon, C2, and cyanogen, Cn. Both are common in cometary comae when they're illuminated by sunlight. But the intensity of the green and the rapidity of the color change have raised eyebrows. One astronomer described it as looking like someone turned on a neon light. That's not normal language for describing celestial phenomena. The size estimates have also been all over the map. Initial calculations based on brightness suggested a nucleus about 5.6 kilometers across. That would make it roughly the size of Manhattan. But subsequent observations and refined models suggest it could be much larger. Some estimates now put it at over 10 kilometers in diameter, making it one of the largest interstellar objects ever detected. The discrepancy comes from uncertainty about the object's albedo, how reflective its surface is. If it's darker than expected, it needs to be bigger to produce the observed brightness. If it's more reflective, it could be smaller. We won't know for certain until we get high-resolution images that can directly resolve the nucleus. Which brings us back to the high-rise problem. The camera that could give us that resolution has been offline at the most critical moments. The rotation period is another oddity. Measurements show 3I/Atlas rotating every 16.16 hours. That converts to 969.6 minutes. As Sarita pointed out, 969 is the biblical age of Methuselah. You can dismiss that as numerological coincidence, but the precision is striking. Most comets have irregular, tumbling rotations due to outgassing jets creating torques. 3I/Atlas appears to rotate smoothly, suggesting either a symmetric shape or balanced outgassing. Then there are the companion objects. Multiple observers have reported seeing smaller glowing objects in formation with 3I/Atlas. 9 of them, according to some reports, moving in perfect formation as if the main object were leading a convoy. Official sources haven't confirmed this. It could be optical artifacts, background stars, or fragments from the main nucleus. But the consistency of reports from independent observers makes it worth noting. If 3I/Atlas has split into multiple pieces, that would be significant. Comets do fragment, especially under thermal stress. But if these objects are maintaining formation rather than dispersing, that suggests something else entirely. The trajectory itself is perhaps the biggest anomaly of all. 3I/Atlas entered the solar system on a hyperbolic orbit, meaning it has enough velocity to escape the sun's gravity. That's expected for an interstellar object. What's not expected is the precision of its path. The orbit brings it within close range of Mars, Earth, and Jupiter. Not collision courses, but close enough for detailed observation from all three. The probability of a random interstellar object passing that close to 3 major planets is vanishingly small. Some astronomers have calculated it at less than 0.0005%. That's 1 in 200,000. Not impossible, but when you stack it on top of all the other anomalies, it stops looking random. Loeb has suggested that if this were an artificially directed probe, you design the trajectory exactly like this. Closed passes of multiple planets maximize science return. You get to study different types of worlds, different atmospheric compositions, different magnetic environments. And you do it all on a single pass through the system, efficiently using gravitational assists to adjust your course. That's how we design our own interplanetary missions. The counterargument is that with billions of stars in the galaxy, and presumably trillions of comets ejected from their systems over billions of years, eventually one will have a trajectory that looks designed. It's the anthropic principle applied to celestial mechanics. We notice this one because it happens to pass close to us. We don't notice the countless others that pass through empty space. Selection bias. That's valid reasoning. But it doesn't explain the other anomalies. The nickel without iron. The antisolar tail. The water production inconsistencies. The rotation period. The companion objects. The color change. Each one individually might have a prosaic explanation. But all of them together? At what point does the natural explanation require more assumptions than the artificial one? That's the question that keeps astronomers up at night. Because admitting we don't have good natural explanations means opening the door to a conclusion that changes everything. If you've stayed with me this long, you're clearly invested in finding answers. Comment below with anomalies to let me know you're still engaged. And if this content is valuable to you, hit that like button. It genuinely helps the algorithm surface this to more people who are searching for truth. Now let's talk about what happens next, because the timeline is critical. 3I/Atlas is currently behind the Sun in what astronomers call solar conjunction. We can't observe it directly. All we can do is wait and prepare for its emergence in early December. December 19th is the date of closest approach to Earth. At 1.8 astronomical units, it's not close by human standards. That's about 270 million kilometers or 170 million miles. No collision risk, but close enough that every major telescope on the planet will be pointed at it. Amateur astronomers are already coordinating observation campaigns. The moment it becomes visible again, hundreds of telescopes will lock on. High-resolution imagery, spectroscopy, photometry, astrometry. Every available technique will be deployed. The scientific community won't be able to control the narrative this time. In the age of citizen science and social media, if there's something unusual to see, the world will see it within hours. No gatekeeping, no delays for peer review. December 25th, Christmas Day, is when it reaches the Great Pyramid angle. 51 degrees, 51 minutes relative to Earth's position. Whether that's meaningful or just pattern matching, it's the kind of synchronicity that will fuel speculation regardless of what the object does. If 3I/Atlas shows any sign of artificial structure when it emerges, if it has altered its trajectory in ways that can't be explained by outgassing, if those companion objects are still in formation, then we're facing the biggest story in human history. But even if it looks completely natural, even if every anomaly has a prosaic explanation we just haven't figured out yet, the very fact that we're having this conversation means something has changed. 10 years ago, mainstream scientists didn't seriously discuss the possibility of interstellar probes. It was science fiction, fringe speculation, not worthy of serious academic consideration. Today, Harvard professors are publishing papers about it. Government officials are being asked about it on national television. Space agencies are coordinating observation campaigns. The paradigm is shifting. Whether 3I/Atlas turns out to be natural or artificial, it's already accomplished something profound. It's made us look up and question our assumptions about our place in the cosmos. It's reminded us that the universe is vast and strange, and we've barely begun to understand it. That the line between natural and artificial might be more blurred than we thought. That intelligence, if it exists elsewhere, might communicate in ways we don't recognize. The Fibonacci pulses, if real, would be one of those unrecognized languages. Not radio signals that require advanced technology to detect, but light patterns visible to anyone with a telescope. Mathematics encoded in brightness variations. A message that speaks to the part of human consciousness that recognizes pattern. That's what makes the October 13th claim so potent, regardless of whether it's true. It suggests a form of communication that bypasses our scientific institutions and speaks directly to observers. Democratic disclosure, if you want to call it that. The powers that be can't suppress what everyone can see with their own eyes. That might be the real purpose of the Fibonacci signal, assuming it happened. Not to convey complex information, but to announce presence. To say, we're here, we're watching, and we're ready to be seen. The timing with Fatima reinforces that interpretation. The miracle of the sun was a mass witnessing event. Tens of thousands of people saw something extraordinary. It couldn't be hidden or classified because too many people experienced it directly. If 3I/Atlas is following the same playbook, then December is going to be unforgettable. Not because governments will disclose anything, but because the phenomenon will disclose itself. That's speculation, obviously. We're in the realm of possibilities, not certainties. But the framework is there. The pieces are in place. All that remains is to see what happens when the object emerges from behind the sun. And that brings us to the most important question. What do we do if it turns out to be real? If 3I/Atlas is artificial, if it's here with purpose, what's our response? Loeb has argued for a reconnaissance mission. Send a probe to intercept it, image it up close, maybe even land on it if possible. Get definitive answers rather than speculating from millions of kilometers away. That mission would take years to plan and execute. You'd need international cooperation, significant funding, and political will. But if the evidence becomes overwhelming, if December's observations remove all reasonable doubt, then the pressure to act will be immense. The problem is timing. 3I/Atlas is moving fast. By mid-2026, it will be far from the sun, accelerating back into interstellar space. We'd have maybe a 2-year window to launch an intercept mission before it becomes unreachable with current technology. 2 years from discovery to launch is incredibly tight for a space mission. Most take a decade or more. But this wouldn't be a normal mission. This would be the most important scientific endeavor in human history. Resources would be mobilized. Bureaucratic obstacles would be swept aside. Every space agency on Earth would contribute. Because missing this opportunity means waiting potentially centuries for another interstellar object to visit. And we don't know if the next one would be as cooperative. 3I/Atlas, if it's artificial, has made itself observable. It's given us a chance to study it. The next probe might not be so accommodating. That's assuming there is a next one. That's assuming this isn't a one-time event. A single visitor making a single pass before returning to the darkness between stars. The dark forest theory suggests that any civilization advanced enough for interstellar travel would be cautious about revealing itself. They'd send probes first, assess the threat level, only make contact if they deem it safe. If that's what's happening here, then 3i/Atlas is our test. How we respond will determine what happens next. Do we act with curiosity and openness, or with fear and hostility? Do we see this as an opportunity or a threat? Those aren't easy questions. History shows that first contact between civilizations doesn't always go well. Usually, the less advanced civilization suffers. But that's predicated on conflict, on incompatible interests. If an intelligence capable of interstellar travel wanted to harm us, they could have done so already. The fact that 3i/Atlas, if artificial, hasn't done anything overtly hostile suggests different intentions. Maybe observation, maybe communication, maybe just passing through, documenting life in the galaxy the way we document wildlife in national parks. Not interfering, just observing. That's one interpretation. Another is that they're waiting, seeing if we reach out, testing whether we're ready for contact by measuring how we respond to their presence. The Fibonacci signal, if it happened, could be that test. A message simple enough that anyone looking would recognize it as intentional, but subtle enough that it can be dismissed by those who aren't ready to accept it. Plausible deniability built into first contact. That's actually quite elegant, because it means the choice is ours. We can acknowledge what we're seeing and respond, or we can look away and pretend it's just a comet. Both options are available. Both are defensible, and that might be exactly the point. True first contact can't be forced. It has to be chosen. On both sides. If you're still with me, if this resonates with something deep in your consciousness, leave a comment saying contact and let me know where you're watching from. Build this community. We're exploring the edges of human understanding together, and that's something special. Now let's talk about the cover-up allegations, because they're part of this story whether we like it or not. The convenient timing of equipment failures. The government shutdown. The delayed data releases. The lack of official statements beyond generic reassurances. Are these genuine coincidences, or is there deliberate suppression happening? That's the question that divides people into camps. The skeptical position is straightforward. Space equipment fails. Budgets get cut. Government shutdowns happen. Data processing takes time, especially when facilities are understaffed. None of this requires conspiracy. It's just Murphy's Law playing out at the worst possible moment. The suspicious position points to the pattern. Every time there's an opportunity for definitive observation, something goes wrong. The high-rise camera fails right before the Mars flyby. The Solar Dynamics Observatory goes offline on October 13th. JUICE data won't be available until February. One failure is bad luck. Two is concerning. Three starts to look deliberate. The historical precedent doesn't help. Government agencies have suppressed uncomfortable information before. The UFO phenomenon is the obvious parallel. Decades of official denial despite thousands of credible reports. Documents released under Freedom of Information Act showing systematic debunking campaigns. Project Blue Book, the Robertson Panel, the Condon Report, all designed to maintain the narrative that nothing extraordinary was happening, even when internal documents told a different story. If that happened with UFOs, why wouldn't it happen with interstellar objects? Especially if confirming artificiality would force uncomfortable questions about how long they've been here, what they're doing, and who's in control. The counter to that is motivation. What's the benefit of suppressing this information? If 3i/Atlas is artificial, the truth will come out eventually. You can't hide something that thousands of amateur astronomers are watching. So why delay? Why risk the backlash when the cover-up is revealed? Unless the goal isn't permanent suppression but controlled disclosure. Release information gradually. Let the public acclimate. Avoid mass panic. That's actually the more generous interpretation of what might be happening. Not a cover-up, but a managed rollout. Information appearing through unofficial channels first, then quietly confirmed later. The Fibonacci signal as a trial balloon. See how people react. Measure the response. Adjust the disclosure strategy accordingly. It's psychological warfare, but aimed at preparation rather than deception. Maybe. Or maybe it's all just unfortunate timing, and we're seeing patterns where none exist. Applying agency to chaos because that's more comfortable than accepting that sometimes things just happen. The truth is, we won't know which interpretation is correct until more data emerges. And even then, it might be ambiguous. That's the frustrating reality of trying to understand phenomena at the edge of human knowledge. Certainty is rare. Most of the time, we're operating on probabilities and incomplete information, making best guesses and adjusting as new data arrives. What we can say with confidence is that 3i/Atlas is extraordinary. Whether extraordinary natural or extraordinary artificial remains to be determined. But either way, it's pushing the boundaries of what we thought possible. And that's valuable regardless of the final conclusion. Because science advances by encountering things that don't fit existing models. Anomalies drive paradigm shifts. 3i/Atlas is forcing us to question assumptions about cometary behavior, about interstellar objects, about the possibility of alien technology. Those questions needed to be asked. Whether this specific object answers them or not, the conversation has begun, and it's not going to stop. The next few weeks are critical. As we approach December and the object's emergence from solar conjunction, observation campaigns are ramping up. Professional and amateur astronomers coordinating. Data-sharing protocols being established. Everyone wants to be the first to spot something definitive. That competitive energy is good for science. It means maximum scrutiny. Multiple independent confirmations. Harder to suppress or manipulate data when it's coming from hundreds of sources simultaneously. The downside is noise. When everyone's looking for anomalies, they start seeing them everywhere. Artifacts get misinterpreted as features. Wishful thinking clouds judgment. Signal-to-noise ratio becomes a serious problem. That's why institutional science exists. Peer review. Methodological rigor. Standards for evidence. Those processes are slow and frustrating, but they filter out most of the nonsense. The challenge is balancing institutional caution with the need for timely response. If we wait for absolute certainty before taking action, opportunities slip away. But if we act on preliminary data that turns out to be wrong, resources get wasted and credibility suffers. There's no perfect solution. We muddle through, doing the best we can with imperfect information. That's how science always works. Incremental progress interrupted by occasional breakthroughs. 3i/Atlas might be one of those breakthroughs. Or it might be a fascinating but ultimately natural phenomenon that teaches us about conditions in other star systems. Both outcomes are valuable. But if I'm being honest, and I think you're here because you appreciate honesty, the evidence is leaning towards something unprecedented. Not proof, but a preponderance of indicators suggesting this is more than just a comet. The nickel without iron. The trajectory. The timing. The synchronicities. The alleged Fibonacci pulses. The observation blackouts. The pattern is there if you're willing to see it. And maybe that's the real test. Not whether 3i/Atlas is artificial, but whether we're capable of recognizing it if it is. Whether we can overcome our biases and see what's in front of us. Because if this is contact, it's being done carefully, gradually, giving us time to adjust, not overwhelming us with undeniable proof, but leaving breadcrumbs for those ready to follow. That's actually the smart way to make first contact. Not landing on the White House lawn. Not broadcasting overwhelming signals that force immediate response. But showing up in a way that can be studied, questioned, debated. Let the species acclimate to the possibility before confirming the reality. Give us time to work through the implications before demanding answers we're not ready to give. If that's what's happening, then the Fibonacci signal makes perfect sense. A message that's obvious to those looking but deniable to those who need to deny. A bridge between ignorance and knowledge. And the December emergence becomes critical. That's when we transition from speculation to observation. From theory to data. From maybe to probably. Whatever happens, We're living through a pivotal moment in human history. The moment when we seriously contemplated the possibility that we're not alone. That intelligence exists beyond Earth. That contact might be happening right now, in slow motion, as an interstellar visitor makes its way through our solar system. That's extraordinary. That's historic. And you're part of it. If you've made it this far in the video, you're clearly invested in understanding what's really happening. So here's what I need from you. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss updates when 3i/Atlas emerges in December. And most importantly, share this video with anyone who values truth over comfortable lies. This information needs to spread, not sensationalized, not distorted, but presented honestly with all the nuance and uncertainty that comes with exploring the unknown. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Tell me if you think this is natural or artificial. Tell me what you'll be watching for in December. Build this community because we're stronger together than we are individually. And hit that like button if you haven't already. I know I keep asking, but it genuinely matters. The algorithm suppresses content that challenges mainstream narratives. Every like, every comment, every share pushes back against that suppression. Now let me tell you about the broader implications, because this story is bigger than just one object. If 3i/Atlas is artificial, it means interstellar travel is possible. That's huge. It means the distances between stars, which seem insurmountable to us, are traversable. That life can spread across the galaxy. It means we're living in a populated universe, not an empty one. That somewhere out there, perhaps many places, intelligence evolve, develop technology, and reach for the stars. It means the Fermi paradox, whereas everybody has an answer. They're here. They've always been here. We just weren't looking properly. But it also raises uncomfortable questions. If they can travel between stars, why haven't they made overt contact? Why the subtlety? Why the ambiguity? The dark forest hypothesis offers one answer. The universe is dangerous. Advanced civilizations hide to avoid being found by predators. Contact only happens under controlled circumstances, minimizing risk. The zoo hypothesis offers another. Earth is a preserve. We're being studied without interference, the way we study wildlife. Prime directive from Star Trek made real. Or maybe they just don't care. Maybe intelligence on their scale finds us as interesting as we find ants. Worthy of brief study, but not interaction. All possibilities. None comforting. Because they all suggest we're not in control. That decisions about contact are being made by others, without our input. That's a hard pill to swallow for a species that likes to think of itself as the pinnacle of creation. The realization that we might be junior partners in a galactic community, or worse, irrelevant, challenges fundamental aspects of human identity, which is probably why disclosure, if it's happening, is so gradual. Drop the information slowly. Let people adjust. Avoid the psychological shock that comes from sudden paradigm collapse. Because make no mistake, confirmed artificial origin for 3i/Atlas would be paradigm collapse. Every institution, every belief system, every assumption about our place in the universe would need to be reevaluated. Religion would have to grapple with non-human intelligence. Science would have to revise models of planetary formation and interstellar travel. Philosophy would have to address questions of consciousness and cognition in alien contexts. It's not just one discovery. It's a cascade of implications rippling through every domain of human thought. And we're not ready. Not really. We tell ourselves we are. We watch science fiction. We speculate about aliens. But fiction is safe. Real contact is terrifying because it's unknowable. We don't know their intentions. We don't know their capabilities. We don't know if they're benevolent, indifferent, or hostile. We're operating blind, trying to interpret signals from an intelligence that might be as far beyond us as we are beyond insects. That asymmetry is what makes this so unnerving. If they're watching us, they know far more about us than we know about them. That power imbalance shapes every interaction. The only comfort, thin as it is, comes from their apparent restraint. If they wanted to harm us, they could have. The fact that Earth still exists, that humanity is still here, suggests either benign intent or indifference. Neither guarantees future safety, But both are better than active hostility. And that's where we are. Waiting, watching, hoping that when 3I/Atlas emerges from behind the sun, it gives us answers instead of more questions. But knowing that whatever we learn, it will change everything. Because you can't unlearn that you're not alone. You can't go back to comfortable ignorance once you've glimpsed the truth. And that's both exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. If you're feeling that mix of emotions right now, you're not alone. Thousands of people are experiencing the same thing, wrestling with the same questions, trying to make sense of the same data. That shared experience is valuable. It means we're going through this together, not isolated in our confusion, but connected by our curiosity. So reach out, comment, share, connect with others who are on this journey. Because whatever happens in December, we'll face it together. And if it turns out that 3I/Atlas is just a comet, if all the anomalies have natural explanations we haven't figured out yet, that's okay too. Because we'll have grown from the experience. We'll have pushed the boundaries of what we consider possible. We'll have asked the big questions and searched honestly for answers. That's what separates curious minds from closed ones. The willingness to follow evidence wherever it leads, even into uncomfortable territory. And you're here, watching this, which means you have that willingness. You're not content with surface explanations. You want to understand what's really happening, even if the truth is stranger than you imagined. That's rare. That's valuable. Don't lose it. Now let's talk about what comes after December. Assuming we get clear observations and data, what's the next step? If 3I/Atlas appears natural, the scientific community will analyze its composition, refine models of interstellar comet formation, and move on to the next mystery. Life continues as normal. If it shows signs of artificiality, everything accelerates. Papers will be published arguing both sides. Debates will rage in academic journals and social media. Public pressure will build for government transparency. And behind the scenes, decisions will be made about how to respond. Whether to attempt communication, whether to launch an intercept mission, whether to prepare for potential consequences. Those decisions won't be made democratically. They'll be made by small groups of officials and advisors, probably classified, definitely without public input. That's how these things work. Which means the rest of us will be trying to piece together what's happening from limited information. Leaks, rumors, official denials. The same pattern we've seen with every sensitive topic. Unless the phenomenon itself forces transparency. If 3I/Atlas does something undeniable in December, something visible to anyone with a telescope, then the cat's out of the bag. No spinning it. No classifying it. Just raw reality. That might be the best-case scenario. Not for institutional power, but for humanity. Because it means we all get to participate in first contact, not just the elites who think they know better. It democratizes the most important moment in human history. And that feels right. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. December is still weeks away. The object is still hidden. And we're still operating on incomplete data and educated guesses. What we can do right now is prepare. Mentally, emotionally, intellectually. Think through the implications. Consider how you'll respond depending on what emerges. Will you embrace the possibility of contact or retreat into denial? Will you seek more information or avoid it? Will you trust official narratives or question them? These aren't hypothetical questions anymore. In a few weeks, they might be very real. And how you answer will shape your experience of whatever comes next. My advice, for what it's worth, is to stay curious. Stay skeptical in the healthy sense, questioning claims while remaining open to evidence. Don't believe everything you hear, but don't dismiss everything either. Find reliable sources. Seek out scientists willing to engage honestly with the data. Avoid sensationalists and debunkers who've already made up their minds. The truth, whatever it is, lies in the messy middle. And keep watching the sky, because that's where answers will come from. Not press conferences or official statements, but the object itself. What it does, how it behaves, what it reveals. That's our best source of truth. Direct observation, raw data, unfiltered by institutional agendas. And in the age of ubiquitous cameras and internet connectivity, that data will be shared immediately. We'll all see it at the same time. No delays. No gatekeepers. That's empowering. That's how discovery should work. So get ready. Prepare your telescope if you have one. Join online communities coordinating observations. Download sky mapping software so you know where to look. Be part of the process. Because this isn't just a story to passively consume. It's an event to actively participate in. History happening in real time, and you get to witness it. That's a privilege. Don't waste it. And as we count down to December, keep asking questions. Keep searching for answers. Keep demanding transparency from institutions that prefer secrecy. Because the only way disclosure happens, if it happens, is through public pressure. Through enough people refusing to accept non-answers. Through collective demand for truth. You have more power than you think. Your voice, combined with thousands of others, creates momentum that institutions can't ignore. Use it. Comment December below if you're committed to watching what happens when 3i/Atlas emerges. Let me see the size of this community. Let me know I'm not shouting into the void. And if you found value in this deep dive, if you appreciate the time and effort that went into researching and presenting this information, show it. Like, share, subscribe. Those aren't empty requests. They're how this content survives in an algorithm designed to suppress it. Every interaction pushes back against that suppression. Every share reaches someone new. Every subscription builds the community of people willing to engage with uncomfortable truths. That community is what gives me hope. Because it means there are still people out there who think critically, who question narratives, who seek understanding rather than comfortable lies. You're those people. And together, we're going to follow this story wherever it leads. Now let me address some of the common objections, because I know some of you are thinking them. This is just confirmation bias. You're seeing patterns because you want to see them. Fair point. Confirmation bias is real. We all suffer from it. But awareness of bias doesn't automatically invalidate observations. The way to combat confirmation bias is through rigorous methodology, independent verification, multiple lines of evidence. That's exactly what the scientific community is trying to do with 3i/Atlas. And when multiple independent observations point to the same anomalies, when different telescopes operated by different teams see the same things, that's stronger evidence than any single claim. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Absolutely. The Sagan standard. And we don't have extraordinary evidence yet. What we have is compelling preliminary data that warrants serious investigation. The question is, what level of evidence would be considered extraordinary enough? If December's observations show geometric structures, is that sufficient? If trajectory analysis proves non-ballistic maneuvering, does that qualify? The bar needs to be high, but not impossibly high. Otherwise, no evidence will ever be enough, and we're engaging in motivated reasoning to preserve existing beliefs. Why would aliens travel all this way just to play games with ambiguous signals? Good question, but it assumes aliens think like us, have similar motivations, operate on similar timescales. Maybe to them, this isn't ambiguous at all. Maybe they're broadcasting clearly, and we're the ones struggling to understand. Or maybe ambiguity is intentional, a way to filter for civilizations ready for contact. We can't know their reasoning without understanding their context. And we don't have that understanding yet. So speculating about motivations is premature. This is all just a psyop to distract from real issues. The old conspiracy within the conspiracy. Maybe. Power structures certainly use distraction tactics. But that doesn't mean everything unusual is manufactured distraction. Sometimes things are just genuinely weird. And dismissing every anomaly as psychological warfare means missing real discoveries when they happen. Balance is key. Stay aware of manipulation attempts while remaining open to legitimate mystery. It's a tightrope, but it's navigable. You're fear-mongering and sensationalizing. Am I? I've tried to present data and let you draw conclusions. I've acknowledged uncertainty and alternative explanations. I've avoided definitive claims while exploring possibilities. If that's fear-mongering, then all speculation about unknown phenomena is fear-mongering, which would make curiosity itself problematic. I don't accept that. There's a difference between honest exploration of disturbing possibilities and manipulative fear-mongering. Intent matters. Method matters. and I believe my approach has been responsible. But you're welcome to disagree. That's the point of presenting information and letting people think for themselves. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to show you what's happening and let you decide what it means. That's all any honest researcher can do. All right, we're deep into this now. Over an hour of material, and we've covered the Fibonacci signal, the perihelion blackout, the cascade of anomalies, the implications for disclosure and first contact. But there's more, because this story connects to broader patterns that have been building for years. The UAP disclosure movement, the increasing acceptance of extraterrestrial possibilities in mainstream science, the shifting paradigm around humanity's place in the universe. 3i/Atlas isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a larger cultural and scientific transformation. And understanding that context helps us make sense of why this particular object is generating so much attention. Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. In 2017, the Pentagon released footage of UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, tracked by military aircraft. Objects performing maneuvers that shouldn't be possible with known physics. No visible propulsion. Instantaneous acceleration. Hypersonic speeds without sonic booms. The government admitted they don't know what these objects are. Multiple former officials testified before Congress about systematic efforts to study and suppress information about these phenomena. Public awareness shifted. What was fringe conspiracy theory became legitimate topic of congressional inquiry. The Overton window moved. Then in 2017, Oumuamua entered the solar system. The first confirmed interstellar object. Cigar-shaped, tumbling, with non-gravitational acceleration that couldn't be fully explained by outgassing. Loeb proposed it might be artificial, a light sail pushed by radiation pressure. Mainstream scientists scoffed, but the idea entered public consciousness. Interstellar objects could be probes. It wasn't crazy to suggest it. In 2019, 2i/Borisov followed. Another interstellar visitor, this one clearly come try. Proof that not all interstellar objects are strange, but also confirmation that they arrive more frequently than previously thought. The galaxy is full of these things. Chunks of material ejected from forming star systems, wandering the void, occasionally passing through our neighborhood. We just didn't have the telescopes to spot them before. Now we do. And we're discovering that the space between stars isn't empty. It's populated with travelers. Most natural, probably. But statistically, if intelligence exists elsewhere, some of those travelers should be artificial. That's basic probability. Not certainty, but reasonable expectation. Which brings us to 2025 and 3i/Atlas, the third interstellar object. But unlike its predecessors, this one arrived with fanfare, preceded by leaks, rumors, anticipation, as if something knew it was coming and was preparing the public. That's speculation, obviously, but the timing and messaging around 3i/Atlas have been unusual from the start. More public attention, more immediate analysis, more willingness to entertain extraordinary hypotheses. It feels orchestrated, whether by human institutions managing disclosure or by the phenomenon itself revealing gradually. Something is guiding the narrative. And that's what makes the Fibonacci signal claim so perfectly timed. It arrives at the moment of maximum public attention, on an anniversary laden with religious and cultural significance, through unofficial channels that allow plausible deniability. It's either brilliant strategic communication or masterful psychological manipulation. Maybe both. The broader pattern is clear. Slow, incremental revelation. Each step building on the last. Acclimating the public to possibilities that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. First, admit UAPs exist. Second, acknowledge they perform impossible maneuvers. Third, release interstellar objects that might be probes. Fourth, leak signals suggesting intelligence. Fifth, well, we'll find out in December. If this is managed disclosure, it's working. Public opinion polls show increasing acceptance of extraterrestrial life. Younger generations especially see it as probable rather than fringe. The cultural shift is real, which makes the question not, is disclosure happening, but who's driving it? Governments preparing humanity for inevitable contact? Scientific institutions finally taking the topic seriously? Or the phenomenon itself, revealing according to its own timeline? All possible, none excludable with current information. What we know is that resistance to the extraterrestrial hypothesis is crumbling, not in conspiracy forums, but in mainstream science. Peer-reviewed papers discussing alien probes. Harvard professors arguing for interstellar archaeology. NASA funding technosignature searches. We're witnessing a transformation in how humanity thinks about itself and its place in the cosmos. That's not nothing. That's everything. And you're part of it. By being here, by engaging with this material, by thinking critically about what's possible and what's probable, you're contributing to that transformation. That matters more than you know. So as we approach the final stretch, as December looms and the object prepares to emerge from behind the sun, remember why you're here. You're seeking truth. You're refusing to accept comfortable lies. You're willing to sit with uncertainty while evidence accumulates. That's rare. That's precious. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The mainstream will mock. The skeptics will dismiss. The gatekeepers will try to control the narrative. Let them. Truth has a way of emerging regardless of who tries to suppress it. And if 3i/Atlas is our first genuine contact with non-human intelligence, if the Fibonacci signal was real, if everything we've discussed turns out to be the opening chapter of humanity's entry into a galactic community, then these moments right now are historic. You'll remember where you were when you first considered the possibility, when you first allowed yourself to believe that maybe, just maybe, we're not alone. And decades from now, when this is all settled history, when the truth is common knowledge and the paradigm has fully shifted, you'll be able to say you were there at the beginning. You were part of the community that asked the hard questions and demanded honest answers. That's legacy. That's impact. But even if it all turns out to be natural, even if December reveals just another comet with unusual but explainable properties, you'll still have gained something invaluable. The experience of confronting the unknown with curiosity rather than fear. The practice of holding multiple possibilities simultaneously without collapsing into certainty. The wisdom to know that the universe is stranger and more wonderful than our current understanding allows. That's growth. That's evolution. And it's exactly what humanity needs right now. So here's my final call to action. Between now and December, stay curious. Keep watching the sky. Keep asking questions. Keep connecting with others on this journey. When 3i/Atlas emerges, document what you see. Share your observations. Contribute to the collective understanding. Be part of the process rather than a passive consumer of information. And whatever happens, whatever we learn, carry forward the mindset that got you here. Openness tempered by skepticism. Curiosity balanced by rigor. Hope grounded in evidence. That's how we navigate the unknown. That's how we grow as a species. If you've made it to the end of this journey, if you've stayed with me through over 2 hours of exploration, speculation, and analysis, then you're exactly the kind of person this world needs more of. Someone willing to engage deeply with difficult questions. Someone who values understanding over comfort. Leave a comment below saying, "I witnessed," to mark your presence here. Let's document this moment. Let's create a record of the community that gathered to explore the possibility of first contact. And please, share this video with anyone who values truth. Anyone who's asked themselves if we're alone in the universe. Anyone ready to consider that the answer might be no. Hit that like button one final time if you haven't already. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the December updates when 3i/Atlas emerges. Turn on notifications. Stay connected. Because whatever happens next, we're going through it together. And that shared experience, that collective awakening to possibilities beyond our current paradigm, that's what makes us human. The Fibonacci signal, if it was real, wasn't just a message from them to us. It was a mirror showing us who we are. Pattern-seeking beings. Meaning makers. Creatures who look at the universe and see not just matter and energy, but stories and significance. That's our superpower. That's what makes us special in a cosmos of cold physics and random chance. We find meaning. We create connection. We reach for the stars, literally and metaphorically. And if there are others out there doing the same thing, reaching across the void with messages encoded in mathematics and light. Then meeting them isn't just first contact. It's recognition. It's finding family we didn't know we had. That's what December might bring. Not invasion or conflict, but kinship. The realization that intelligence, wherever it emerges, shares common ground. Common questions. Common wonder at existence itself. Or maybe December brings nothing. Maybe 3I/Atlas is just a comet. Maybe the Fibonacci signal was a hoax or a misinterpretation. Maybe we're still alone, still waiting, still wondering. But even that wouldn't diminish what we've done here. We've explored. We've questioned. We've allowed ourselves to hope and dream and imagine possibilities beyond our immediate experience. That's what makes us human. And that's what will eventually lead us to contact, if contact is possible. Not technology alone, but the spirit that drives us to look beyond the horizon and ask, what if? So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging with this material. Thank you for being part of a community that refuses to accept easy answers when hard questions need to be asked. You matter. Your curiosity matters. Your willingness to sit with uncertainty matters. Never forget that. The next video on your screen will dive even deeper into the implications of what we've discussed. Watch it. Keep the journey going. Keep expanding your understanding. And when December comes, when 3I/Atlas emerges from behind the sun, when we finally get to see what's been hiding in the glare, remember this moment. Remember the anticipation. Remember the community that gathered to witness potential history. Because moments like these don't come often. Moments when everything could change. When paradigms teeter on the edge of collapse and new understanding waits to be born. We're living in such a moment right now. And you're here for it. That's not coincidence. That's destiny. The Fibonacci signal, 5813, the golden ratio woven into the fabric of reality, allegedly transmitted by an object from beyond our solar system on the anniversary of the miracle of Fatima, speaks to something deep in the human psyche. The belief that the universe is not random chaos, but ordered beauty. That intelligence is not an accident, but a feature. That we are not alone, but part of a larger community waiting to be discovered. Whether that belief is justified, whether the evidence supports it, whether 3I/Atlas confirms or refutes it, all of that remains to be seen. But the belief itself, the hope itself, the curiosity itself, those are already real, already powerful, already transforming how we see ourselves and our cosmos. And in the end, maybe that's the real message. Not in the pulses of light or the mathematical sequences, but in the act of looking up and asking, is anyone there? Because in asking, we've already answered a deeper question about ourselves. We are beings who reach beyond the known, who seek connection across impossible distances, who refuse to accept that existence ends at the boundaries of our planet. That makes us explorers. That makes us dreamers. That makes us ready, whether contact comes in December or decades from now or never. We're ready because we dared to imagine it. We're ready because we looked at an anomalous comet and saw possibility. We're ready because we gathered here, in this digital space, to explore the edges of the known together. And that's how first contact will happen, if it happens. Not through governments or institutions, but through individuals who looked up, saw something strange, and refused to look away. You are those individuals. And when the story of how humanity joined the galactic community is finally written, your curiosity, your courage, your refusal to accept comfortable ignorance, that will be the foundation. So stand proud. You're part of something bigger than yourself, bigger than any single discovery or revelation. You're part of the human journey from isolation to connection, from ignorance to understanding, from earthbound to cosmic. That journey continues in December when 3I/Atlas emerges. It continues in the observations we make, the data we share, the conclusions we draw together. It continues in you, in your willingness to keep asking questions even when answers are uncertain or uncomfortable. That's the real Fibonacci sequence. Not 5813 impulses of light, but the exponential growth of human understanding. Each generation building on the last. Each discovery enabling the next. Each question opening new horizons. We're living in the curve of that growth right now. At the inflection point where isolated Earth meets connected cosmos, where ancient questions finally approach answers. And you're here. You're witnessing it. You're participating in it. Never forget that. Never underestimate your role in this transformation. The universe is vast and strange and filled with wonders we're only beginning to glimpse. 3i/Atlas, whether natural or artificial, is one of those wonders. A visitor from the darkness between stars. A messenger carrying information about conditions, compositions, maybe even intentions from beyond our solar neighborhood. How we receive that message, how we interpret it, how we respond to it, that defines who we are as a species. Choose curiosity over fear. Choose openness over cynicism. Choose hope over despair. Those choices make all the difference. And when December comes, when the data flows, when the truth begins to emerge from behind the sun's glare, you'll be ready. Because you've prepared yourself. You've engaged with the possibilities. You've done the work of expanding your consciousness to accommodate new realities. That's the journey. That's the reward. Thank you for taking it with me. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Comment, ready for December, below. Hit that like button one more time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're here when the next chapter unfolds. And remember, the truth is out there. We just have to be brave enough to look for it. See you in December, when 3i/Atlas emerges and we finally learn whether we've been alone all along, or if the Fibonacci signal was our first hello to neighbors we never knew we had. Until then, keep watching the skies. Keep questioning everything. Keep seeking truth. This is only the beginning.